Okay, welcome back. In the last video, we talked about bringing in all your parts for your creature. Again, this one has a skull, torso, pelvis, etc., etc. You see all the parts here. And then what we did was we also adjusted the anchor point on each part so that when we rotate it, for example, on what we call the joints, right, or the action points, that the object will rotate, in the right way, in the right pivot point. Okay, so now what we want to do is rig up the model. Okay, rigging simply means that we have a hierarchy, the way the parts are joined together in some way. The hierarchy is this: there's a parent and a child. Think of it that way. Whatever the parent does, the child follows and does the same thing or mimics the same behavior. So, in order for the rigging to work on a model in the most basic sense, all of these parts have to link together in some way, right? And they all have to link eventually to a central object. In this case, our central object is going to be our pelvis, okay? So, what that means is that one of the objects becomes the parent to the other, okay? And just to show you how this works, let's start with the skull. Now, in the last video, in the last project, we talked about how to parent a motion path to an object, right? Well, the same idea applies here. If we want to parent the skull to something, we probably want to parent to what's right next to it, right? In this case, the torso. That's why I put them in this order, because I'm going to do the rigging of the model, the linking of the model, so to speak. And so if I want to parent the torso to the skull, for example, I can use the Pickwick tool here, the parent Pickwick. I can just grab this and drag it down to the torso and then let go. Now, if you look over here in the skull layer here in the window to the right, the parent now is the torso. What that means is now whenever I move the torso, for example, let's click on the torso layer. When I move the torso, notice that the skull follows with it. So the torso is the parent, the skull is the child that follows, right? See how that works? So now we can go down to the torso, and notice here the torso doesn't have any parent object that it's attached to. But we can do that again simply by using the parent Pickwick tool. Click it, hold the mouse button down, drag it to the pelvis. Now, when we click on the pelvis and move that, notice that the torso and the skull follow because they're both the children of the parent, which is the pelvis. And so everything's going to eventually leak into the pelvis. So that's the mentality. Everything links in from the top to the center, from the bottom to the center, from the feet up to the pelvis, and then from the outside in, from the fingers or the arm, from the fingers all the way to the pelvis. So the next thing we might want to do is link the arms now. So we'll go over to let's go to the left bicep. The left bicep now is going to link into the torso, right? Because it's right next to it. And the torso is already linked to the pelvis. So that's how the hierarchy works. So here we can use the parent Pickwick tool. We can link this over to the torso. Okay. So now when I move the torso, that left bicep will follow. Oops, wrong layer. Let's go to the torso layer. Notice there that the arm is now linked, or the torso is now the parent of the left bicep. Okay, so same thing. We're going to go down to the left forearm now, and we're going to rig that one. We're going to link that one to its parent, the left bicep. So again, parent Pickwick tool, link that to the left bicep. So now when I go onto the left bicep and I rotate it, for example, the forearm's going to follow. So you see here our model is linking up nicely here. Okay, let's do the same thing with the right bicep. Again, right bicep, we're going to grab the parent Pickwick tool, and link that to the torso. Okay. So again, if we go over to the torso and move it, notice there the right bicep is linked to it now. Okay, now we want to go to the right forearm and link that to the right bicep. So again, we rotate the right bicep. It's always a good idea to do this and make sure everything's linking up okay. Perfect. Okay. All right, so that's all linked together. Now, the last thing we need to do are the legs, right? So let's go to the right thigh, for example. The right thigh is right next to the pelvis, and since everything's linking down to the pelvis, it makes sense to link the right thigh to the pelvis as well. Okay. Okay, and then we have, let's see, right calf, I believe. Where is that? Let's see if we can go down here. The right calf, of course, will link right to the right thigh, right? So the right thigh will be the parent. So again, right there, if we go to the right thigh, do a little rotation, notice the whole leg will follow. Okay? Same thing with the left, right? So left thigh, of course, is going to link up to the, or be the child of the pelvis. Okay? And just to test that, we can move the pelvis. Let's go over to the pelvis. Move that. And yep, everything seems to be linked up correctly so far. Last one now is the left calf. So let's go down there. And that's going to link to the left thigh. So again, use the Pickwick tool. Drop it in there. Another option I just want to show you is I just undid this. I can also link it over here. Okay. So to the right of the left calf title there, where it says none, I can just click that open and tell it right here to link to the left thigh. So it's the same thing here. Just the parent Pickwick tool is easy to click and drag it. Or you can just open up these windows over here on the right and tell the program which object to link it to, or that's going to be its parent. So now everything eventually links down into the pelvis, right? We have the skull all the way going down to the torso, torso going to the pelvis, the left and right arms going up to into eventually linking to the torso, which already is linked to the pelvis. Legs also are coming from the feet up into the pelvis. So now, if I want to move my skeleton, I would simply use the pelvis because everything's linked to it. Does that make sense? So if you need to move your model somewhere on the canvas, you use the pelvis here that everything's linked to, and notice that everything follows it. If you, let's say you tried to move your skeleton just based on the torso, you're only going to get the upper half, right? That it's parenting. It's not apparent to the bottom pieces, right? Because those are parented by the pelvis. So that's why it makes sense to rig everything to eventually be linked to a central object, such as the pelvis. Okay? And so that's the basic process of rigging your creature. You're basically just taking each part and connecting it to another one, making one the parent that leads and the other the child that follows.